Valentine's Day is an interesting holiday. People spend tons of money on flowers and chocolate, romantic dinners, and expensive getaways, when in reality all they need to do is sit down, cuddle up on the couch, and watch a good old horror flick. I mean, what's more likely to get the significant other in your arms? Fancy dinner surrounded by a million people, all hoping to get laid? Or a madman with a pickaxe and a vampire ready to feast on some nubile flesh? Well, I know which one works for me, and today we're looking at 11 horror flicks that I think are perfect for a spooky, romantic, and steamy Valentine's Day. Of course, I have to start with the staple of My Bloody Valentine. Now, maybe an 80s slasher flick isn't the sexiest or most romantic film to start with, but it does have a murderer swinging a pickaxe, while young people all try and celebrate Valentine's Day, so there's that. The film takes place in the small mining town of the appropriately named Valentine Bluff. Valentine's Day has been cancelled in the town for some 20 years after a mining accident caused by two supervisors who decided a Valentine's Day dance was more important, resulting in the deaths of many of the miners, excluding one Harry Warden who resorted to cannibalism in order to survive. The following year, Harry murders both supervisors, leaving behind Valentine's Day candy boxes which hold the supervisors' hearts, and a warning that if they ever throw another Valentine's Day dance again, the murders will continue. 20 years later, and Harry has since been locked up, so the mayor decides to reinstate the Valentine's Day dance, and that's when the murders begin again. Has Harry returned to finish what he started, or has someone else taken up the mantle? The movie features a lot of Valentine's Day ambiance. I mean, there are decorations everywhere throughout the movie. The cast is really likable, and you genuinely feel bad when someone dies. There's also a love triangle at the heart of the story, which makes you wonder if maybe one of them is involved with the murders. For an 80s slasher, it is surprisingly lacking in the pointless nudity department though, but it makes up for it in the fairly brutal deaths. Well, if you watch the restored uncut version. But where does it rate on the love tester? Ooh, looks like we're just at lovelorn with this one. Still though, this film makes for a fun Valentine's Day watch. Hey, do you remember Scream? Do you remember the glut of sanitized teen slashers that came out afterwards? Well, Valentine is one of those. Valentine came at the tail end of the slasher revival, and it definitely feels like it. In 1988, you've got this dork named Jeremy who asks a bunch of young ladies to dance, who all but one say no. Dorothy says sure, why not, and the two eventually start making out under the bleachers. That's when the school bullies arrive, and because of the stress of the situation, Jeremy gets a bloody nose. The bullies then beat Jeremy because Dorothy tells them Jeremy assaulted her. Jeremy is eventually expelled from school and sent to a mental institution. Years later, Shelley, one of the girls that turned down Jeremy, is now a medical student, and after finding an unsettling Valentine's Day card in her locker, she's stalked and killed by a figure in a black trench coat and a Cupid mask that also seems to have a bloody nose. Now all the girls that turned Jeremy down and his bullies seem to be on the chopping block. Has Jeremy returned to get revenge on all of those that helped send him away to the mental house? The film, even though it's R-rated, is fairly sanitized. The deaths aren't interesting, there aren't any adult situations, and the movie is fairly boring overall, but it does take place during Valentine's Day, so it had to be included. But how does it rank on the love tester? Ooh, cold fish. Well, maybe it's better you just skip this one. You know, nothing says romance quite like the David Cronenberg body horror film, The Fly. Yeah, the film is pretty disgusting, but it does have some heart to it. The film follows scientist Seth Brundle, who may have created a device capable of teleportation. While at a Meet the Press event for the company responsible for funding his work, he meets journalist Veronica Quaife. Veronica goes to Seth's place where Seth asks her to document everything that happens with his experiment. Things start to blossom between the two until Seth begins to think Veronica may be starting her relationship back up with her ex, who also just so happens to be her editor. After a successful teleportation of a baboon and some growing tension between Seth and Veronica's ex, Seth decides to enter the teleporter himself, unaware that a fly has also made its way inside. Even though the teleportation seems to go without a hitch, Seth begins to change, becoming stronger, more agile, and with increased sexual desire. However, things take a turn for the worse when Seth starts to literally turn into a fly, as he's been fused with the fly at a genetic level. The film is disgusting, sometimes sexy, and kind of sad, because you know just how much Veronica cares for Seth. But how does it rank on the love tester? Yeah, if you look below the disgusting surface of the film, it definitely has a lot more going on than one would think. Also, if it's too gross, maybe your date will just hide in your chest, so I'll count that as a win. Cat People is a remake of the 1942 film, which takes the basic concept of the original and cranks up the sexiness. You basically have a film about people who are werecats, and when they become intimate with another person, they turn into a Black Panther, and the only way to turn back human is to kill someone. Young Irina makes her way to New Orleans to reconnect with her brother Paul. The two are orphaned as children, and her brother was in and out of psych wards growing up. However, when they do finally connect, things get weird when he tries to make advances towards her. However, she declines and meets a man named Oliver, who she falls in love with. Her brother eventually reveals to her what they really are, and since Irina is a virgin, she's never turned into a Black Panther. He also tells her that werecats are incestuous, and mating between werecats prevents the transformation from occurring. Irina still refuses to go through with the act though, but as her inner instincts start to take over, Irina becomes unable to stop what she desires most. The movie is loaded with over-the-top sex appeal. I mean, it doesn't hurt that Natasha Kinski is pretty easy on the eyes, and if you've ever wanted to see Malcolm McDowell, and I mean all of Malcolm McDowell, then this is the movie for you. It is a horror film though, and there are some gross scenes, including one that involves a dead Black Panther. So if that's not your thing, this is your warning. But where does this movie rank on the love tester? Yeah, the movie oozes with sexuality, and there is quite a bit of nakedness going on with this one. Yes, the original 1933 King Kong definitely belongs on a list like this. It might seem weird that King Kong be considered something for Valentine's Day, but the entire story at its heart is a love story. Filmmaker Carl Denham, known for making films in strange and exotic locations, decides to make one at an uncharted island known as Skull Island. Carl finds a young actress named Ann Darrow and promises her the adventure of a lifetime if she joins. Once they make it to Skull Island, the natives capture Ann as a sacrifice to their King Kong, a giant ape on the island that the natives worship. When Kong arrives, he becomes infatuated by Ann, protecting her from various dinosaurs and beasts roaming the island. However, when Kong is distracted fending off yet another beast, Ann escapes with Jack Driscoll, another man who has fallen in love with her. As they make it back to the native village, Kong comes stampeding through looking for her. He's knocked out with a gas bomb, or he's taken to New York to be used as an attraction. With Ann being the only thing on his mind, Kong escapes and searches the panicked streets of New York. Even though Kong is a giant ape, he still manages to fall in love with Ann Darrow. He would have done anything to protect her. I mean, he fights off a Tyrannosaurus Rex for God's sake. If that isn't love, then I don't know what is. But where does King Kong fall on the love tester? That's right, King Kong is nothing less than a Casanova. The ladies just can't help themselves when it comes to this giant ape. In keeping with the theme of monsters loving women, we now go to the R-rated version of the creature from the Black Lagoon, Guillermo del Toro's The Shape of Water. I could have added Creature from the Black Lagoon because he does have a thing for the ladies, but this movie takes the concept to the next level, and I mean the next level. If you ever wanted to see Gilman get laid, well, this is the movie for you. Elisa Esposito is a lonely woman. She has a friend named Zelda and a gay neighbor Giles, but yet she yearns for more. She works at a top secret military facility as a janitor, and one day a mysterious creature is brought in, caught in the rivers of South America. Elisa begins visiting with the amphibious creature, and the two begin to form a bond. When Elisa discovers what the military is going to do with him, she frees it with the help of her friend Zelda and brings it back home to live in her bathtub, until she can find a way to get it back to the ocean. This leads to an even deeper connection, and eventually they, do the deed. And apparently Gilman is packing. Meanwhile, the military is going to stop at nothing in finding the creature so they can use it for their nefarious plans. The movie is a very interesting take on the creature falls in love with a woman trope. It's not going to be for everyone and has some really out there ideas. But where does it fall on the love tester? Despite how odd of an idea it is, the film still captures the idea of love in a way that most movies simply can't. I'm just glad Gilman finally got the girl. The Hunger is an erotic horror film featuring vampires and David Bowie. Do I really need to say any more? The film basically tells a love triangle involving two vampires and a doctor played by Susan Sarandon. Miriam Blaylock, a centuries-old vampire, offers humans eternal life as her lovers. Her current lover, a man named John Blaylock, lure young couples back to their penthouse so they may feed their multiple desires. However, in present day, John begins to age years in only a matter of days. It turns out he was promised eternal life by Miriam, but not eternal youth. He seeks the help of a Dr. Sarah who is studying the effects of rapid aging, but thinks he's insane, so she refuses to help. John, in his desperation to regain his youth, kills a young girl who the Blaylocks were teaching music. This does nothing to revert his aging, and he pleads to Miriam to kill him. Instead, she brings him to the attic and places him in a coffin amongst all of her previous lovers, forced to live out the rest of eternity in a wooden box. Sarah comes to see John, but is met by Miriam, who seduces her. Miriam bites Sarah, and she begins to feel the effects of vampirism. This one definitely lives up to its reputation of being an erotic horror film. However, stylization and the sexual perversity seem to replace the story, which is quite lacking. However, how does it rate on the love tester? Even though it does lack in the character aspect, it does offer a good amount of sexiness that may make for a fun little Valentine's Day watch. Is there really a more important love than between a man and his car? Well, Arnie sure as hell thinks so when he finds out that his new car may have came from hell itself. Arnie is a typical nerdy guy, always getting picked on by the school bullies, but thankfully he has one good friend, Dennis, who always has his back. One day while being driven home, Arnie spots an old Plymouth Fury for sale, and Arnie just has to have it. However, his folks aren't happy with his purchase, so he has to keep the bucket of bolts at the nearby garage where he can work on it after school. However, Arnie's personality begins to change, and his parents and Dennis all begin to worry about him. Dennis confronts the man who sold Arnie the car and learns of its sordid history. It seems anyone who gets too close to the owner of the car comes to a tragic end. Arnie finds himself a girlfriend, but she becomes jealous of the car, and the feeling seems to be mutual because Christine also becomes jealous of her, even trying to kill her. Now, this might not be a traditional movie one would watch on Valentine's Day, but you can't deny how Arnie acts with Christine is really no different than maybe you've seen some friends or family act with a new love. He becomes obsessed with it, unwilling to listen to any negativity about it. Christine is the only thing that matters, and Arnie just ends up driving everyone else away. But even though it's man and machine, just how does Christine rank on the love tester? Woohoo! Looks like the love tester isn't too impressed with this one. Still though, I don't think you can go wrong with this one for a little Valentine's Day watch. You couldn't have a list of horror movies for Valentine's without An American Werewolf in London. Now, it may just seem like a fun werewolf movie on the surface, but there's also a good love story here between your two leads. David and his buddy Jack are enjoying a nice backpacking through the moors of Yorkshire. They make their way to a local pub who warn the men to stay on the roads and avoid the moors. However, they don't listen, and both men are attacked by a beast at night. Jack ends up dying, but David is saved by the men from the pub who shot the beast. Before David passes out from his attack, he notices the beast laying next to him is now a man. As David recovers from his attack, he begins to have visions of his friend Jack, who tells him they were attacked by a werewolf, and unless he takes his own life, he too will become one. Not listening to his dead friend's warning, he stays with a young nurse named Alex Price, who took care of him when he was in the hospital, and the two get close, and I mean very close. However, bodies begin to pile up, and David starts waking up in strange places with no idea how he got there. An American Werewolf in London is a great fun movie, but on top of the fun werewolf stuff, you also have a great relationship between David and Alex that really takes an interesting turn at the end of the film. But how does the love tester see it? David and Alex have a great relationship, and that really is the heart of the film. The film isn't overtly gratuitous. I mean, you do have a shower scene where the two get in touch with one another, but it plays to the strengths of the movie. This is one I definitely recommend if you're looking for something scary, yet romantic, to watch on Valentine's Day. It's really impossible to do a list like this and not have Bram Stoker's Dracula on it. Dracula has always been a pimp when it comes to the ladies, but this one took things in a slightly different path. Jonathan Harker travels to Transylvania to meet with Count Dracula so he can deal with some real estate Dracula acquired in London. There, Dracula discovers a picture of Jonathan's fiancée Mina, who Dracula thinks is the reincarnation of his beloved wife. Dracula locks Jonathan away for his brides to feed on while he travels to London where he searches out Mina. While in London, he seduces and bites the neck of Mina's friend Lucy, which begins to turn her into a vampire. Mina is then met by Dracula, and she begins to develop feelings for him. However, once she hears back from Jonathan, she meets with him so the two can get married. When they return to London, Dracula finds Mina, and she admits to him that she still loves him, and begs for him to turn her into a vampire. As she begins to change, Van Helsing hypnotizes Mina so we can learn where Dracula is heading. The film takes the story of Dracula and changes it into a romance between Mina and Vlad. There are also some rather spicy scenes throughout the movie, and my girl Monica Bellucci looking beautiful as always. Oh, and let's not forget whatever the hell is going on in this scene. But what does the love tester think of Dracula? Yeah, hard to go any lower than that, honestly. The movie is filled with romance, lost love, and some exposed skin, so it's really hard not to recommend this one as a Valentine's Day watch. I was gonna keep this to 10 entries, but then I remembered Near Dark and thought I would slip this one in as well. I know it's yet another vampire movie, but I can't help it that filmmakers and writers like to make vampires all seductive. Caleb Colton, a small town farm boy, one night meets a sweet young thing named May, but she has a small secret. She's a vampire. She bites Caleb and then runs off. Early in the morning, as the sun is rising, Caleb is picked up by May's group, who plan on killing him after May let him run off. But she says they can't because he's starting to turn. They reluctantly keep Caleb, but because he refuses to kill, May starts letting him drink from her. Their relationship continues to develop, including after an incident where Caleb allows a bar patron to survive even though the rest of the group wanted them all dead. However, the group changes their tune when Caleb helps them escape a midday police chase. The film is an underrated gem that rarely gets talked about. The characters are all great, and you basically have an Aliens reunion with Lance Henriksen, Bill Paxton, and Jeanette Goldstein. But the heart of the film comes down to Caleb and May's relationship, and well, what does the love tester think of it? Ooh, not bad. Near Dark is a great movie to watch if you're looking for something on Valentine's Day, and even when it was re-released a few years back, they changed the artwork to make it look more Twilight-ish. But this movie is not Twilight, trust me. Well, there you have it. 11 films that I think would be a great watch for Valentine's Day. And you don't need a Valentine to enjoy them. They're all perfectly enjoyable to watch on your own. But what are some horror films that you like to watch on Valentine's Day? Let me know down in the comments because I'm sure there are plenty that I never even thought of. Anyways, that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.
Valentine's Day. Bummer.